welcome. Is it starting? Oh my God, look at me. I'm a bloody baby boomer. Hello everyone. Welcome to Gee, It's White in Here, a discussion about being the only person of color in a white writer's room. My name's Nina Oyama. I will be chairing the event, and I'm broadcasting to you from Gadigal land.
Hi, I'm Pavan, and I'm a comedian and a writer, and I'm broadcasting from the Kulin Nation, Wurundjeri people in Nam.
Hiya everyone, my name is Rafeif. I'm an emerging writer and very emerging screenwriter, and I'm broadcasting from Burulu on Wachapnunga, Buja.
Hey everyone. So basically today we're going to talk about writers' rooms, specifically TV writers' rooms, and what it's like being the only not white person in them. I think it'd be really good to just like kind of all of us go around and like talk about our experiences, and I guess like why we got into TV. Sorry if I look down, I have notes here on my little phone, like a good chair should, hopefully. But yeah, I think like we should talk about what genre we work in, what kind of rooms we've been in, and then I guess like what drew us to TV. So for me personally, like I work in a lot of comedy writers' rooms. The very first writers' room I was in, I was 19 years old, and some producer just saw me doing stand-up comedy and was like, yeah, let's put her in this room for a kid's sketch show. And I think I was like the only girl in the room, and the rest of it was like these 30-year-old guys. And I actually sucked so bad in the writers' room. Like I just totally every pitch I did like ate total crap, silence. But I had overprepared and like brought 40 pages of sketch material to the room. And so at lunchtime I like pulled the head writer aside, and he actually listened to me, and then they let me write on the show, and I got a little credit. And then since then I've pretty much done like narrative comedy, I've done dramedy, and this year I've worked on like a dramedy for a binge original and like an Amazon comedy, and right now I'm working on a animated comedy for Disney. It's kind of like the Australian version of Rick and Morty. So that's my little and what drew me to the medium. I don't know, I love watching TV, man. It's the best. You don't have to think about your real life.
So true. I'll go next. What do I primarily write for soap. So like I got my start writing for soap straight out of uni. I like write for Neighbours primarily, kind of only really. It's been the thing that's kind of just ticked me along for ages, which has been really, really nice. But
so anything bad you say about a writer's room is directly about Neighbours.
Sure. I mean, like I've like done rooms here and there for like development stuff, like other things too, for comedies as well. But like primarily, like I guess like for me, like soap and like the drama, like weirdly, like even though it's like not the thing that I kind of enjoy writing the most, it's definitely not the reason I got into TV. It's the world that I've just like weirdly found myself in for the past couple of years. But like, I mean, like definitely like TV comedy was the reason. Like half-hour television, I think, is the only thing that I had the attention span for as a kid. So like, that's all I've wanted to like do. But...
So I feel vastly underqualified now, hearing about both of your all experiences.
There's like no such thing, honestly. Like we all start somewhere.
Yeah, so I'm very much starting. I was lucky enough to be part of the Western Australia Town Camp in 2019. My God, that seems like an eon ago. And that kind of came off of the back of me trying to kind of write a comedy script for an animation for like an animation studio in South Africa. I got longlisted. I did not get called back, which I'm choosing to say is not my sense of humor, but rather that it's just not the show. So I'm currently part of I did the 2020 Afters National Town Camp, where I kind of just developed my sci-fi TV show a bit more. And I'm currently working on a proof of concept as part of the Equity Screen Diversity Showcase. the kind of spaces and writers' room that I've been in have been mostly as a note taker. So I haven't even gotten a seat at the table to pitch yet. Kind of got into screenwriting because I find it's like the perfect synergy of everything that I want, like storytelling through a visual medium where I can like create characters that look like me. Because I would really love to see characters that look like me that are not dead, sad, or dead and sad, you know?
Dead and sad, totally, yeah.
So
Dead
it's
and sad.
partly like that, and partly like vengeance for the fact that like there hasn't been a single Black character who lasted a whole season in Doctor Who, like a Black woman character. And I want to be a writer on Doctor Who so I can like change that one day. Yeah.
Yeah, that rules. I'm sorry. I'm like, how do I chair? No, this is really interesting. I will say there is something in like, I guess, yeah. Oh, wait, I'm going to try and follow this. Oh, okay. Sorry, I forgot to say. So we should talk about what a writer's room is, I think, because maybe not everyone knows what writer's rooms are. So does anyone else want to define? I'm happy to take the lead on it. Okay, I'll just do it. That's what chairs do. Yeah. I think they take the lead on this stuff. So when you're like creating a TV show, usually like 1 or 2 people create like a concept, and then when they create that concept, they make like a show bible, or just kind of like a 1-page pitch. And then after that gets like funding, or gets attached to a production company that has money to pay people. What they do is they get a big group of people, usually maybe like 4 or 5 people, and all those people flesh out the character ideas in the pitch and like the story ideas. They make sure that like the characters are authentic and good, and they make sure the stories make sense. And then usually after that, you know, whatever, it can be anywhere from like 1 day to like, you know, 3 months that you're in this room. But once that is done, then usually like one person goes off and writes the Bible, or like one person each from the writer's room goes off and writes the script, like depending on how far along you are in development. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about TV writers' rooms today. It's just kind of like the development part of TV that you don't necessarily see, because I think a lot of people just think like writers, and I think some writers do this, but like people just go, oh, they just like banged out a script of their own volition. No, usually there's like a whole stack of people that have come on like to consult and do research, and they're all in the room. And in comedy especially, like pitching jokes.
And also I think it's probably like important to note like just like the hierarchy as well within a room, like, which I'm sure will factor into this conversation at some point. But like, you know, you've got the note taker who's kind of like Rafeif, like, you know, like we've all experienced
lowest of the low.
It's like the lowest. Yeah, exactly. It's like the lowest of the low. You're like the lowest, like, you know, on the right. Like you do probably the most amount of like physical work in terms of like this, which I can't do it. I just can't. And you don't get paid as much as everyone else. And then you've got, I guess, people who are there, like who have just been brought in, I guess, freelance. And then you've got people whose show it probably is, and you know, are running it, and like they're like there for permanently. You know, I think there's like that. Is that kind of the hierarchy?
Yeah, absolutely. And then within that, like, I usually think like, so the note taker, depending on what show you're working on, either has no input or little input. So either your job is just to sit down and write down everyone's genius ideas while everyone like doesn't give a shit about you, or you can kind of occasionally, I don't know, in the writers' rooms, I try to get the note takers to speak because I feel like their input is really valuable. Also, note takers weirdly are like usually women, which is a weird, or non-binary people, but it's like this, it's a weird gendered thing where it's like men can't take notes. I will say the few like cis men I've had that have been note takers have been terrible. So I think women need to stop being worse note takers.
If I can speak on behalf of all cis men, I agree, because I can't note take for the life of me.
Yeah, because it's a lot of like organizational stuff, right? Like categorizing.
I just can't type fast. I'm just not a fast typer. It's not something that I ever learned to do well.
Well, maybe you should.
I've been really getting into like stenography. Like I've just been watching a lot of stenography videos to like try and.
What's stenography?
It's like that, like, you know, in like a court of law, the people who like type really quickly, like they sort of.
Oh yeah. They do like the shorthand and stuff.
Transcribe everyone, and like they've got like a different. This is such a tangent. They've got a different keyboard. It's like they've got like 4 or 5 buttons or something on the keyboard, but it like depending on how they press it, it can like write whole words in just one press. Anyway, absolute tangent. does not need to be
Well,
going.
basically, a note taker is it's like a writer's room stenographer, and it's also like that position. Yeah, it's like a stepping stone. Sorry.
So I don't know why.
But that. No, sorry for shutting down. Well, we shouldn't apologize. This is something that I've noticed as well. When you have like a group of people that aren't white, we're really deferential because we're not used to being the loudest voice in the room. So everyone's like, "No, you go. No, you." It's a very funny. Like, did you?
And the irony could be, for me anyway, at least, is that my family's very loud. You know, so like I do come from a loud family. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We are like mouses or mice. Oh my god.
Yeah, especially in like these formal situations. I will say, did you find that, Rafeif, when you did After's Talent Camp? Because I also did. I did the New South Wales version in 2019, and it's the same thing. And I also did the SBS Digital Originals Initiative, and it's like we were all POC people, but like everyone would be like, "Does anyone want to ask any questions?" And everyone would be like, "Oh, we're allowed to ask questions." Yeah, like
absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, let's keep going about. Oh yeah, sorry.
It comes from sorry. Utter tangent, but it does come from the fact that we're in a space where certain voices, cis white male voices, have dominated for a long time. And then, like, when it comes to equality, especially gender equality, like, a cis white woman is seen as, like, the pinnacle of gender equality. And that's kind of like,
That is true.
Yeah, do you guys remember when I like Killing Eve as a show. Actually, I haven't watched beyond season 2, but I loved the first 2 seasons. And they tweeted this picture that was like, all-female team. And then everyone was like, it's just like 30 white women. Like, it's like, good on you. Like, also, it's good to have all, like, I'm not, but also just like, there's the lead character is not white. And yet, these stories, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Oh, we should definitely circle back on that. Like, as writers, how do we feel about like characters who aren't white being written by white folk? How does that impact the quality of the folk, the shows we watch?
I kind of want to finish explaining the writers' room hierarchies, and then we'll go back to that, because I actually do think that conversation has a lot to do with the hierarchy of the writers' room, which is usually, so you have the note taker who is, the bottom, and then you have like, again, like the freelancers, like Pavan said, and then you have like usually the creators or whoever's idea it was, but then above them you also often have like the producers or the people who are funding it and supervising that portion of it that are going to actually take it into production, like at the top level. And I'd say like 99% of the time they are white. This is a weird question, but it's raining where I am. Can you hear the rain?
Okay, yeah, I was about to be like, what is that noise? Yeah. Okay.
Can I do something really antisocial, which is shut my window? This is not a very cool chair thing to do. It's like my window. I'm gonna. This is so embarrassing. I am so embarrassed by this. Literally,
it's all good. It's all good.
We'll improvise. We'll improvise. We'll improvise. So Rafeif, what kind of writers' rooms have you been in for?
So my experience so far has been really actually wonderful, because I've been in writers' rooms facilitated by After's Talent Camp, and then working on my own proof of concept, which has been really great. I've also been in spaces where I'm a note taker, and that's been a really interesting experience because I have a theatre background as well. So moving from theatre to screen has been really fun, I guess. It's been a learning curve, and I've definitely heard about you, Pavan, because everyone uses you as the example of you're the one writing on Neighbours. So,
oh my god, I need to change my brand quick smart, I think.
I think it's great to write on Neighbours. I have always wanted to write on a soap, because you get such a good knowledge of character, and you're able to quickly, I don't know, I feel like because you write from a character driven perspective, you're able to create story from pre-existing traits, which is a really great skill, because I think often when you do comedy, you're like, what's the funniest thing? And then you go with the funniest thing, but it's not what it doesn't fit within the character profile. I just wanted to circle back round to the room stuff, which is that and what Rafeif was saying before, which is that a lot of the time, how's the rain sounding, by the way? Is that okay? Great.
It's all good.
Cool. But it is this thing of like, often when you're in a writer's room, you do have white higher ups, like a white producer or a white creator, who have put characters of color into their scripts. And part of you being in this writer's room is they're harvesting, your authenticity so that they can pump out a script that is true to like you or whatever, or your experience. Or even like in some situations, I've been hired to write on shows with like Indian characters or like characters that are of color that are not of my background. And then it's this thing of like, oh, would a person, would a Southeast Asian person do this? And then they look at me and I'm like, I don't know, dude. I don't why.
I just find that really interesting, like that binary of just like person of color and white, like like we're all the same thing, but like, because like just like in talking about racism as well, like often like when like racism is always like through the lens of like a white person being racist to like a person of color, but like people of color can be racist towards other people of color as well. Like that's so possible, and I enjoy those stories quite a bit. But
me too, because they're more like nuanced, and there's
nuanced.
So much like weird stuff where you're like, I want to bat for the right team, but what is
but like on that subject of like there being like I guess like white higher ups or like the people in power, I suppose, the ones that like the biggest voice in the room. For me, like my experience, the way that like that sort of manifests like practically sometimes is when we like come to like naming new characters, like, and the default is often just like a David or a Daniel or a Ben, and it's like someone in the room might be like, oh, but we've already had a Ben on the show. We can't name it Ben. Let's do. Oh, fine, we'll do Bill. Like and it's like this character doesn't like their race doesn't matter, but like where like just from the name, just from picking a name, it's like you're already like closing the door on like especially like at Neighbours where like like a lot of actors kind of get their break or start or whatever, like without sort of stopping that bias from occurring, you can't like I don't know.
And there also is this weird thing where it is like, so say you do want to have like a character of color, but you don't want to like say what ethnicity they like. Whereas it's like if you give them like an abject, like if you call them Michiko, then everyone's like, okay, that's a Japanese person. But then how do we have Japanese? Like there's all this like politics around like if you do honor that, and then within that, like, so I was working on a show, which is like with one of the like basically like this character is like a power hungry like young psychopath girl who's trying to rise the ranks of popularity, and she like kills all these people, there's all these other girls to like get to the top, and like basically because the feature family is white in the show because the creator is white, but because this girl is white, but the producers are trying to get more diverse casting in. So they cast every single person that gets killed as like a person of color. And then the showrunners had to be like, no, you can't have like a white girl killing like 6 POC characters voiced by POC. Like, that is not okay. Like, but it is this thing where that we go, colorblind casting. Oh, we can just throw everyone in anywhere. And then you kind of zoom out a bit more and you're like, oh, like, that film Mukbang as well, where it was like obviously
is it out?
No, it was like a short film from ages ago that was like got in trouble because it had, like during the Black Lives Matter movement, there was like an image in the show in the film of like of like a white girl like strangling this like African Australian boy, and it was such an intense image. But it was also like because they were like colorblind casting, like they didn't consider the repercussions of like what that showed and like the racial violence implication of that. So it is this weird thing where it's like you have to do a deep think and then you have to do like an even deeper. Are you vaping?
Can I?
Wow, it's a Wild West out here, dude.
Am I allowed to? I'm vaping.
Again, it's National Young Writers Festival.
I'm vaping.
It's very youthful to be vaping in the. Gee, it's smoky in here. That's what the chat should be called.
More vapors in writers' room. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I need to see more vape representation.
No, it's horrible for you and you shouldn't do it. But anyway.
For our very young viewers, yes, listen to Pavan on this.
I also think it's I don't know, I have like a lot of odd experiences. Like this is probably one of my favorite stories. I also want to like I've had a lot of really great experiences in writer's room, and I think it's because I have such a fun time in writer's rooms that when like odd things happen, they're like especially noticeable. Like I did a writer's room where they had these Asian characters, which were Chinese. Again, like I don't know, you're just like, I don't know. But then you're like, I guess I have to put an input. But yeah, they had these like character, and one of the things was there's a character that was a tiger mum, like an abject tiger mum. And I was like, oh, this is not a great look for Asian people. Like it's actually funnier. What if the mum is like a total bogan? Because I also just find Asian bogans really funny, and there's so many of them, and everyone's always like, no, Asian people have to have an accent. And so I was like, oh, repitch this back, because tiger mums, like, yeah, I don't want to endorse this stereotype. And I got the revised Bible back after the writer's room, and they changed it to tiger aunt. And I was like, oh my God. Just like, they were trying to do the right thing, but even so, it was like, conceptually, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if either of you had this experience, but I'm sort of assuming you probably have, where you've just been asked really informally, without a contract or anything, for your experiences by someone who is going to go into a writer's room and pitch that experience and insight. Like, has that been something that you've experienced in the screen industry? Because I've kind of had these like, let's catch up for a coffee. Also, I'm just gonna like mine you for everything you know, and suddenly, like, is that, or is that just me?
Well, I mean, like, okay, so like my personal experience, like literally my career in a way, like for writing for Neighbours, is kind of owed to the fact that I'm brown, because when I was like hired for the show, they were introducing like an Indian family, and like you can say that's a coincidence. And I believe it's a coincidence for many years, but like, come on, who are you trying to kid? It's like, of course.
Yeah,
like,
but they
like,
did hire you and pay you. Like, I think that's vastly different.
That is true. That is completely vastly different. That is absolutely vastly different. But yeah, I mean, like it just happened. I guess yeah. To answer your question, yes, but I've been paid for it.
See, I haven't had that happen to me. Person, like that's really messed up. Like they should put you in the room, and that actually makes me really angry, because also you are a writer. Like I do think that there is something in like, asking people, like for some of my friends like me that I write with, I write a lot better collaboratively. Like I prefer to do like development work or work on my one-page pitches with another person to bounce ideas off them. So what me and my friends do is we like give each other a day. So it's like, okay, you can harvest my brain, but then I get to harvest your brain. And then we've equally harvested each other's brains, and it's fine. But then we get the sole credit when it comes to actually writing or, pitching or whatever, because the concept started from our own, like, this, yeah. But like the idea that someone is taking those moments from you and not giving back is really objectively cooked. Like,
and it seems like it is the reality for so many emerging writers, though. Like that you do have to give those ideas or your personal. It's not even your ideas; it's your personal experiences.
It's like a racial internship. You know what I mean? Where it's like, especially like for like emerging creatives. Like I remember like when I was like sort of like at the start, like I very much felt this pressure to like really like sell myself as the Indian guy who like knows about Indian stuff, and like I can do anything Indian, and like that's what people are gonna like know me for, and like that's what they're gonna hire me for. And then you end up like having a lot of these conversations where you try to like pitch shows where it's like for free about like you're like I'm Indian, like here's an Indian thing, I love Indian stuff. And I mean the truth of the fact is I don't know what Indian stuff is at all, but it just feels like this weird racial internship where like you're unpaid and you're just like there, and then like you hope for dear God that someone will hire you afterwards. But
and also it's like when people ask you things that are related to whatever, like often it is within like the context of a plot or the context of like a character or whatever, and they almost want you to like validate it. Like it's this weird thing where they're oh, so because people like this do these types of things, and they want you to say yes so they can write it in the document so it can become part of the machine. And when you push back against it, it's like it's like it annoys people because they're just kind of looking for you to give the tick of approval in some ways. And I also think that, like, say you did do a show and you just kind of, you know, in a bid to want to be liked and want everyone to think that you're cool and hire you again, you did kind of capitulate to a lot of these demands that were maybe not as authentic as you would like, but fit well in the story. And then later on, there was backlash. Like, that backlash would fall on you because you were like the token whatever in the writer's room that approved all the story going forward. Like, it's such a weird, dangerous place because it's like in some ways it feels like a lose situation, I think, sometimes.
It's the hyper vulnerability comes with the hyper visibility, and you'll always be hyper visible as a person of color in a creative space, especially in the screen industry. We rarely see people of color in Australia. I was gonna say in Western Australia because that's where I am right now, and I'm like, can someone hire me to not be here? If anyone here is
totally. I'll hire you when I can.
This is National Young Writers Festival.
It's like just an empty promise I've made. Sorry.
If you ever want to write for speculative fiction and prose, hit me up. But yeah, no, Australian screen is not diverse, and we know this. And so that when you have a voice of color, you're kind of put at the front and center. And like you said, Nina, like, responsibility falls on you because you become the hyper visible individual that just
totally.
It's which is so not okay.
My preference would so much rather be like, I'd rather just not have to talk about that stuff because I just like I don't have anything important to say personally about anything in general, and like I'd rather just be hired because I just like to, you know, for whatever the project is, like I just want to do the fun stuff and not have to like think about the important details of anything really. But then also, if you know, like, if people do start rooms, like, this is just advice, I guess, if you do start a room, have the power to start a room and are hiring people, make sure you hire more than one of something, if that makes sense, because like the most isolating thing in my experience as well is just like being in a room, being the only one, and not being able to like just look someone in the eye and be like, oh, we get it, you know, like you just have no one like to do that with, whereas like everyone else does. Like if you're like in a solely one race white room or whatever, you know, it's like everyone's kind of, and like that comfort, that level of comfort, I think is like, for me personally, like I don't have that all the time, and so it's very stifling to like actually say something, because then you feel like it's kind of like, it's not gaslighting, but you feel like when you say something and they don't get it, then you're just wrong about that thing. But like it's like no, it's like something that I've like lived through or something that I've seen or experienced, or but like if there's no one there to back you up or something, you know, it's just what do you do? You shut up, I guess.
Yeah, it makes you feel like your voice isn't right or something. Like it does some psychological.
And it could be like the most petty stuff. Like it's never like for like important things, you know. It's like for like, because on the show, like there was like this Indian family on Neighbours, and like, you know, there'd just be like some things where I'd just be like, oh, I don't know, like this thing, and then people would just be like, I don't know, like families don't do that, you know. And it's like, well, maybe the other families don't do that, but like this family might, because
that's families. I know, I hate that critique also. But will Australian audiences understand? It's like, shut up. Like what you're saying is, will white people be able to comprehend this? Which I think they can. Like if you just show them, then it's real. Is that a weird thing to say? Like if you're just like, oh, like here's an Asian family to take their shoes off.
Yeah.
Like white people are going to be like, that's fake. That's not a real. They're not going to be able to stop enjoying the story. Like they're just going to be like, okay, and then they'll hopefully be so attached to the characters that they'll follow them still.
But see, like the problem is, sorry. You go. I'm talking too much.
I was gonna say, my favorite is when you get asked to create universal characters, which I love, because that's just code for write like a white character and cast a brown person. Like that's like universally liked characters, at least.
Yeah.
Because like trying to get those small things over the line, like those small cultural things over the line, like you're absolutely right. Like if it is just on the screen, then it just exists and it's just real, and like people won't like raise an eyebrow. The issue is like trying to convince a million other people before it even gets to that stage to do that thing. Like you like and like that's tricky. Like that's tricky. Like having to convince like people of like just like trusting you, I suppose, or whatever. Especially if you're like only the only person championing a certain thing at any given point. Like, and like that's that applies to more than just being like to like racial stuff. That applies to like heaps of stuff, I suppose. Like, you know, whatever minority you're sort of representing that.
Yeah, I also think there is this thing almost where it's like if you have like a diverse character, it's like now it's a diverse show. Like, you know, where they're like they don't really they don't really care about the nuances of diverse characters in white-led shows because like they're like, we don't really have to honor it because it's not a show about Indian people. It's just like Indian characters or whatever. You know, don't you think it's kind of like because they're not like the central folk? I don't know. I always feel like there's some kind of weird thing, and that comes back to the like the universal character, but it is odd because like then those characters are just white coded, like they're like what's the I this is a weird, so I went to high school and it was like a 90% Asian high school, and it's like we call there's like Asian people that like considered themselves white were called bananas because they were white inside, yellow on the outside. And then they were like weebs, but they were called eggs because they were yellow on the inside and white on the outside. Anyway, I realize this is a very like not especially PC chat, but like I do feel like that's like kind of a good placeholder for like these characters, which are just like, you know, they
totally
haven't they don't bear like the trauma of the immigrant experience, I guess, or they're not created in mind with that backstory. And often if they are, then the backstory is like a bit racist. Like it's like, oh, it's an indigenous kid that doesn't have a father, and you're like, oh my, could we just for a second
at the same time, like it's our responsibility to create like these nuanced and universal characters while like also battling against what seems to be like this sort of giant machine. Like so when I was writing for like when I was working on the Bible for my show, I kind of had to stop and think because some of the feedback I got was it's too black. You need to actually have like non-black people, which I responded in no, I don't, because I don't want to. But yeah, like it's genuinely like our responsibility when we're the only voice in the room to actually make sure that like our voice is heard and represented in some way, shape, or form, with the understanding that we do not represent entire communities. Like we only represent ourselves. But yeah, how do you challenge these power structures? I feel like for anyone who's watching, please do go into screenwriting. It's not all doom and gloom. I promise there is a community out there and we can challenge these power structures. But I'd love to hear how you both challenge these power structures, having been in the industry for longer.
I just quit, I think. I just quit.
That's so valid.
I don't know. I think I'm
accept it.
Well, yeah, I think I'm kind of with Pavan. Not accepted. I think like that's too much. Like I'm gonna roll over and like die. Like that's really sad. I don't think that. But in a way, I think there is like a graceful way that you can navigate it. In the way that is like you have to be aware. Like you have to be as authentic as possible within the parameters that are set around the screenwriting industry. And I think it is possible to create authentic stuff. And I think there have been some really good creators, like The Family Law is really good. And shows like that. And I think like it is possible, but I also think it's like you have to know who you're speaking to. You have to know like what kind of people the producers you're talking to are. Like, you have to know what kind of show goes on Channel 10 versus what kind of show goes on ABC versus what kind of show goes on SBS. And I hate to say it, but if you're a person of color, you're more likely to get a show on SBS. You're like 100 times more likely. And that's not to say Channel 10 won't like slowly start to diversify their slate, but at the moment where it is, it's like if you're a creative color making comedy or drama in Australia, it's more likely to end up on it's more likely to find a home and find a market in SBS.
Yeah. I mean, that's so true. Like, just knowing, like, when you're working on a project, like the harsh reality of it is sometimes, depending on where it's going, you like, like the battle that you're trying to like fight, you just are like especially like for Neighbours, I guess, like as an example, like what am I going to do? Change that show? Like, it's been on the air for 30 years. Like, what am I gonna like that's gonna be my thing? I'm gonna like lead that crusade. Like, it's like I've only got so much like energy to spend thinking about that show. But it's like, like it's kind of a shit thing to realize. But there is a harsh truth in that. Like, certain networks want certain content because they want to access certain audiences, and like you're not going to see like a million like all brown character TV shows on air or whatever, because like from their perspective, like a network's perspective, for example, they're just not going to think that the audience is large enough to validate it existing or something. Like their investment's not going to pay off or something, And
I also do think it's about like accumulating trust, like, because if you're just like like fresh out of university creator and you have a great pilot script, that's great, but like no one in Australia is going to hand you that $2 million, like, whatever, to make your TV show. Same with America, even. Like, I feel like you have to come with like so many notches under your belt until you're trusted enough to be like a Michaela Cole or like Maya Erskine from Pen 15, right? You have to have like all this stuff, and in order to accumulate that stuff, like, there are moments in writers' rooms where things will happen that are not in your control, and you just have to go like, great. And the other thing is also, like, not every TV show gets up, and not every person is going to listen to you, and all you can do is try your best to like be the most authentic and accurate to your experience, and like really make sure in and I hate to say it, but like a non-polemic way. Like, this is why I think also creators of color, we're all very charming for some reason. Don't you think? Like, I feel like we all
thank you.
except for Pavan, total douchebag. Exactly, but it's like, because we are accommodating emotionally and making people like us, so that when we critique people, it comes from a place of love, which I do genuinely believe, because I love a lot of the people that I work with. But it's also when you have to say something that's a little bit spicy, pardon the pun, but you just say something that's a little bit spicy, like, you want it to come from an affable place that's gonna, the spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. Like, and it's a weird thing to say, but it's like, there's also, I think, and I don't want to endorse being like, oh, you have to be like charming and buddy up to everyone and play the game in that way, because essentially that's like girl bossing, and that's like, joining the white capitalist patriarchy. So I don't endorse it. But I do think that, like, you can't come in and be like, I'm this person, here are all my demands, and then expect to be picked up as like a stoic alter, at least from my personal experience in this industry. Although maybe there are people, like, I don't want to be like, there haven't ever been someone that's done that. But I think like you also, like, a lot of creators of color that I know that are super successful are also the rich ones. They're not the people from like backlot Western Sydney. Like, they're the people whose families are intensely wealthy and have all this crazy freaking wealth from all sorts of backgrounds as well. And it's like, it's this weird thing where you're like, oh, like, even within the scope of the creators of color, the ones that are rising are the ones that are like financially viable because of their, families. I just think that's another very big thing.
Yeah.
So even within that, the way they contribute to writers' rooms is through like a very middle class. And I didn't come from a rich background, but like I went to public school, and like my parents barely ever give me money. I hate saying that. That's disgusting. How gross is that? They barely ever give me money. No, I don't know. I had a really bad relationship with my parents for a long time. And they're gallery owners, and we lived in a mansion. No. I have a very strange family dynamic that I am not at liberty to talk about. But like, we did not get along for a lot. Like we didn't
Yeah,
speak for a few years. So it wasn't as if I had like their support, especially when I was navigating the right. Like I didn't come from that place that's like, oh, my mum's paying my rent or whatever, which I think a lot of middle class people's parents do. And again, no shame in that, like fucking hustle the best. Oh, sorry for swear. But like, yeah, I do think there's also consideration in the way that like middle class POC experiences are then like filtered into film and TV in some way. And I don't think they're any less valid, but like there is a difference between like socioeconomic perspectives.
Totally, yeah. Well, especially like if you're like for me, like I just like didn't know anyone that was a writer growing up or anything like that, or worked in the creatives field, and like all the family friends that I had were just doing things that would make them like have money in the future, and to pick this career was like the dumbest thing that I could ever do. And I still probably agree with that. I completely regret this choice that I've made, but I will say, like, please, if you're like, you know, like a young person, like who's like 18, like thinking about what to do at uni, like please, and you're thinking about doing screenwriting, just go do it. Like you won't, like you'll be fine. Like you'll be fine, I hope. But like just do it. If you want to do it, just do it. That's all I want to say.
Well, yep. I'm just thinking of every single POC auntie who is gonna come after you for that sentence.
Sure. I'm happy to whatever.
Like, but yeah,
fight them.
There are so many programs.
All those tiger aunts, I'll take them down.
Tiger aunt representation.
But yeah, no, like there are so many programs that can get you in the door now. Things like After Town Camp, which is amazing. Things like Adaptable and is it Scriptable? The Queensland.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not.
I don't know.
I'm like across New South Wales and Victoria because that's where where I reside.
Fair and valid. But yeah, no, there are programs that can get you in the door. I guess the most important thing is to actually write and know that it's okay to write. Like it's so very valid. And what you said, Nina, about like how class does affect going into like this sort of career, because it's not a safe career. It's not a
it's like, volatile. It's volatile as hell.
It's very volatile,
especially during the like this time where we have so much cuts to the arts. Like to be a creative it's not a safe choice, but it's an important choice. It's an important choice because and gosh, this is gonna sound so sanctimonious. So please, I was raised by a poet, just a heads up. So this is why I say nonsense like this. Not a rich poet, but a poet nonetheless.
I don't. Is there such a thing? That sounds like an oxymoron.
Right? Rich poets. And I actually thought I was never going to be a writer because I saw that for everyone that I cared about, the arts did not pay, and I was like, oh, I need to get like a career in a field that will pay me. And so I wasted thousands of dollars on a neuroscience degree. A career does not pay me. But anyway.
You have a neuroscience degree? Sorry, that's incredible.
It's not worth it. It sounds fancy. It's not fancy.
Right.
It's just, it's sadness.
God.
But like, what was I gonna say? In the end, like our voices are the ones that are gonna be speaking back to power and gonna be speaking against power. And in this increasingly politicized world where the voices of color are not just being pushed to the margins, but actively erased, like to have writers of color speak, write, create, even have these conversations is beyond incredible. And it might not be seen as activism outright, but it is part of a larger movement. because
Yeah.
we will be
I-
hopefully shifting.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, like our existence in this industry is inherently political and politicized. I just want to throw something out there. If anybody is watching and has comments or questions, we have 5 minutes to answer them. So I just thought, sorry, that was my bad as chair. I got caught up in the beautiful conversation of it all. Pavan, were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say, like, my dream and goal in life is like, this conversation about like we have to speak to power and all that sort of stuff. There's all these gatekeepers. My dream is to one day become a gatekeeper. That's my dream.
Yeah, I was
So you want
first
to be part
talking
of the power structures.
Look,
Yeah.
but like, I have a nicer gate. It'll be a good. Anyone can come through my gate. It'll be a good one. It'll, be wide, nice and wide.
I do have this theory. So my friend he's a disabled writer and actor, and he like wrote to me and he was like, I just feel like a prop. I just feel like everybody is using me as a freaking prop, and like I'm just there like because of my disability. Like, and he just went on this huge rant, and I kind of was like, I don't know. I wrote back and I was like, become your own prop, which is actually not an amazing idea. But if somebody's going to use you anyway, it might as well be you, because otherwise someone else will use you as a prop and not in the way that you want to. Like,
I agree.
I maybe it's cynical to say, but I think like when you're carving out a name for yourself, you should exploit your own identity a little bit until like you're comfortable to go beyond that. And I don't know if that's like a bad advice. But I do think there is something in like when you're carving out a name for yourself, like Pavan, like what you did where you were like, I'm the brown guy for Neighbours, and now you're like, I'm the comedy guy. And I think that there's something to be said for that. Like I definitely was like, I was like the young Asian girl for so long, and now I feel like I have enough notches under my belt that I'm not just the young Asian girl. I'm the young Asian girl who smokes bongs and isn't young anymore.
That's true. You're very crass. You're very crass.
Thank you. Somebody, I literally got a call that was like, we have this character that's like a total piece of shit. Do you want to come write for the show? Yes. So, if you can create a persona beyond your identity, after carving out a space that encompasses your identity, I think that's a really cool thing. I mean, in an ideal world, we wouldn't have to exploit our own identities, but I think that like it separates us from the animals, and by animals, I mean white people.
Fuck it out. They're going to be behind gates in my world.
White people 101.
And I can say that because I'm half white. So
some of my closest friends are white, so let's not,
there are some good white people.
I agree with that.
But,
yeah.
Actually, I that sounded like a mistake.
Actually, that is true. There are actually some white people who are like very much like on our side,
all the white people who hired us to make this movement, do this talk. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's true.
But also, it's true. But all the white people that do hire us, at least like I think a lot of them do genuinely have like quite good intentions, and
some of them are really guilty, and that's what we should be avoiding.
Some of them are really guilty. Oh gosh, if we had enough time, I would love to have spoken about intention versus impact and how we feel in writers' rooms when we face microaggressions and things. But I don't think I have enough time. I'm just looking.
I think we have to.
I think it's
we're just gonna have to let it sit. Let it sit awkwardly. Like when someone does a microaggression. I'm a big fan of turning it on. Like, I know it's a weird thing, but I will absolutely like maybe like I don't know how to describe I don't know. No, it's a weird thing, but I will point it out, and then I'll laugh, and I'll be like, "It's fine." And I'll be like, and it makes everyone so uncomfortable. But also, if you laugh, it's like this weird. It's a thing of where you have to be nice so that you can point truths out.
True.
I don't believe that we should be nice to point these truths out. I know that it's a very valid survival tactic, and I have done it. And I have done it so much because, like, as a Black woman, I'm facing misogyny and all the stuff. Oh, are we being kicked off?
I think so.
Okay, never mind.
No, wait, say your piece. The Writers' Festival should not silence people of color's voices.
Wow. No, this is
reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time. But I genuinely don't think we should be capitulating to like structures that are built on like this imperialist, capitalist, cis heteropatriarchy. Like, you know, like I think that we need to reach a point where we don't have to be nice to give our honest point of view. And like it's like the fact that for so long it's been our survival tactic is devastating, and it's an aggression in itself. It's an act of violence in itself, like that society has made it so we have to, like, you know, it's kind of like,
yeah, I try not to think about that too much because then I get real sad. I think so much of like being a person of color working in this industry is you do have to ignore like the cognitive dissonance that you have to engage to like continue to work in it. Because if you just think about it, you'll just be too sad. Is that a horrible thing to say?
But our silences will not protect us is essentially
true.
I'm going for. Quoting
it's true.
Black woman, like, you know, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house.
And clearly we will not be silenced because they clearly want to end this stream, and we're just not letting them.
We really are.
I feel like we're
it's very funny. If you could see the private group chat, Natalie, who's the producer of this, is writing, I'm not silencing. I'm not silencing. Like, okay, cool. We're going to go for another 25 minutes.
I feel like we're at the Emmys and we've just like won something, and we're like, they're trying to play us off with the music. And you know, like when they're like, oh, don't play us off. How dare you play us off? And they stay on. It's such a boss moment when they stay on. Anyway.